Hi guys, welcome to our penultimate note guide for our second to last unit or kind of learning target. We're going to talk about kinetics and equilibrium today. Kinetics is how fast and equilibrium is how far. So we have 7 different learning objectives today that we're going to look at. We're going to explain, evaluate, describe, relate, describe and draw, and then describe a little bit more. So we're going to start out talking about kinetics, which is how fast. So how fast is a reaction happening? We're going to look at how we can change the effects of the rate of reaction with temperature and concentration. We're going to talk about what happens when you add a catalyst to the reaction. And we're going to describe ways that you can change the rate at which a reaction occurs. So I wanted to start out with just a little bit of example here. You can see a car here on the left, and then those hand warmers that we looked at in our thermodynamics virtual lab. So rusting is the process of iron reacting with oxygen to produce iron oxide, which is that rust. And so the rate at which this reaction occurs depends on a few things: temperature, concentration, and surface area being the main ones. The big difference between this reaction is in the car versus the hand warmer is in the hand warmer, the pieces of iron are very, very small, and the reaction happens at a much quicker rate, which produces that heat to keep your hands warm. The rusting on this car, thankful for us, doesn't happen as quickly because the surface area of those particles is much larger, meaning that the oxygen has less of the iron to actually interact with. So rate, when we talk about the rate at which a reaction is happening, is a measure in the change in concentration versus time. So it's the measure of the change in concentration versus time. Sorry for that typo. And so if you look at this graph, it looks a little confusing at first. Let's look at our x and y axis. We have concentration increasing here, and we have as time goes on here. So as time goes on, the amount of products should be very little as we start, and the amount of reactants would be very high. So as the reaction proceeds, the amount of reactants gets converted into products. And you should see that over time, then you end up with product and reactant going to 0, where product is increasing over time. And so the rate of reactions is going to be different dependent on the type of reaction that you have. Collision theory is a theory we use to kind of describe how reactions occur and why they sometimes don't. So reactants must collide. There's 2 things here. They must collide with enough energy and the proper orientation for a reaction to progress. So here's an example. If you had a matchstick, it doesn't just magically ignite, which is great when it's sitting in the box. You have to strike it against that little like sandpaper on the side, right? And that's because reactants, when you're striking it across that sandpaper, are getting the energy and the proper orientation to ignite the tip of your match. So you need both of those things present for a reaction to occur. If you have just enough energy but the reactants don't collide properly, then the reaction isn't going to occur. If you are colliding properly but with not enough energy, it's not going to happen. You need to have both of them in order for the reaction to progress. And activation energy is that energy required for the reactants to go to products in addition to the correct orientation. So the activation energy is the difference between the reactants and the top of your potential energy diagram. So this is the energy required. So think about it like a soccer ball. I can keep kicking my soccer ball, but if I don't give it enough energy to get over the hill, it's not going to go over the hill. It's just going to keep coming back. Oops. It's just going to keep coming back down to me. So I need to kick the ball with enough speed to get to the top of the hill, and then it can go back over, as long as the reactants also collide in the proper orientation. So what factors affect reaction rates? There are 6 things that can affect reaction rates, or how quickly the reaction is going to occur: concentration, pressure, temperature, surface area, light, and catalyst. And we're going to look at a few of these in more detail. But here's just a little graph here, again, looking at the rate of reaction. The rate of reaction is going to increase with increasing temperature, concentration, and pressure, meaning if it's at a higher temperature, the reaction is going to go faster. If there's more reactants, the reaction is going to go faster. And if you're under a higher pressure, the reaction is going to go faster. So we're going to focus on concentration and temperature for this class. Concentration should make sense. The more particles you have, the more likely you are to interact and collide with each other. Think about the fact of like people getting on and off of elevators. If there's only one person getting on and off the elevator, you're very unlikely, or you're not going to collide with anyone on that elevator. However, the more people you add to the elevator going in and out, you're more likely to collide with those people. So increasing the concentration increases the rate of reaction. It can also increase the pressure. So if you have a closed container, when we looked at gas laws, if you have a closed container that doesn't change in volume, if you keep adding more molecules, the pressure is going to increase, which again is going to force them to be closer together and collide more often, which is then increasing the chances of products being produced due to those collisions. Temperature should also make sense. As temperature increases, the speed of the molecules also increases. So again, let's use an example of people. If we had 10 people in a classroom walking around, we're not going to run into each other as often. If there's 10 people in a classroom and I tell you guys to run, you really need to pay attention to not run into each other, right? A collision is more likely to occur if you are moving faster. And remember, temperature and kinetic energy, which we looked at, are related to each other. The more kinetic energy something has, the higher the temperature is. So if I give my molecules more energy, they're more likely to collide and go over into products for my reaction. The third one we're going to look at is catalysts. And catalysts also increase the rate of reaction. But the key part with catalysts is they aren't consumed in the reaction. They aren't used up. So catalysts don't run out in a chemical reaction. We can keep using them to propel our reaction. And what they do is they lower the activation energy of the reaction. So here you can see the blue line is the reaction or the potential energy diagram for the reaction without a catalyst, and the red line is with a catalyst. Notice, remember that activation energy is the difference between the reactants and the top of your potential energy diagram, and so we decrease the amount of energy required when we add a catalyst to a reaction. In biology, we use what are called enzymes to speed up a lot of our biological processes. A lot of our biological processes need to happen at a higher temperature than our 37 degrees Fahrenheit body temperature. So the body has lots of different enzymes, which are a type of catalyst, a biological catalyst, to speed up those chemical reactions. Also in medicine and in the body, we can take medicine which inhibit this process. Inhibitors block or stop enzymes from functioning, meaning they're going to slow or stop a chemical reaction from occurring. And that takes us through equilibrium. I'm going to stop and make a second video for equilibrium.